Many people think of pugs as cute, fat, and funny doggies. Especially sweet are the sounds they make while breathing that are comparable to the sounds of my dad snoring at 3 a.m. I would agree that pugs can be cute like any other dog, but their cuteness is unfortunately what actually causes them so much struggle. And pugs aren't the only dog breed whose cute looks is prioritized over being able to live a comfortable life in which you aren't prone to dozens of different conditions. The truth is that we have done dogs dirty. Many breeds were ruined by humans just to achieve a specific appearance. I don't know who thought it would be adorable if a dog's face looked like a splashed tomato. The animal called a dog normally has a snout. Let's remove it. What can happen? Let's go even farther and make the dog's muzzles concave. Why not? Who will forbid us? Okay, maybe it's better not to give ideas to breeders because maybe soon when I go to the park, I will see dogs with concave muzzles and I will feel guilty. Many dog breeds in the past had healthier traits, but for some reasons, they were not enough, or I would say not visually pleasing enough. Because a dog that has a face like it was tired all the time looks very pleasing, or they weren't scary enough like an XL American bully so that your alpha male neighbor can show his dominance and then pay compensation because he let the dog which he cannot control off the leash. Pugs, but also breeds like bulldogs, Boston Terriers, Shar-Pei, Basset Hounds, and bullies are just some of the examples of cruel selective breeding. I have put bullies in this category, though I don't specifically mean the standard American bully, but more these genetic experiments from Instagram that pseudo-breeders sell as a whole different breed that they call exotic bully, micro bully, or any shit like that. We'll come to this later. In this video, I'd like to talk about the problem of selective breeding, whose victims are none other than dogs, because it seems to me that such a dog rather does not care what it looks like. So it's a shame that it later has to suffer from various health issues resulting from the breeder's experiments, so that someone can be happy they have a pretty pet. And this is true that every breed has some conditions to which it's more susceptible, but there are definitely breeds that are especially strongly exposed to many illnesses just because of how their body is built. And by thoughtlessly buying dogs because they look cute or cool, we are actually giving the permission to continue their suffering, because if there is demand, there will be supply. So let's start with the short explanation of what selective breeding is, because I used that word in the beginning. Artificial selection, also known as selective breeding, is a process where humans breed animals or plants to obtain specific, desirable traits. In practice, it means that breeders will look for parent animals that can pass on the best set of genes to their offspring. It is used, for example, in farming to have more cows that produce higher amount of milk. However, when it comes to the selective breeding of dogs, we don't necessarily gain anything important from it. While in the given example, we get an increased milk production, here it is only about how the dogs will look. For centuries, the appearance of dogs has been adapted to human aesthetic preferences. It is said that a especially significant time was the reign of Queen Victoria, who ruled the United Kingdom from 1837 to 1901, when people started experimenting more with the dog's appearances due to the growing popularity of contests held at the time. Why am I specifically talking about the UK? I don't know, because this video is in English, I guess? The only problem that occurred during that period was that due to the increasing number of new breeds, there was a limited pool of dogs which could potentially pass on their unique traits. And that's why the breeders decided to try the Alabama's way of solving things. They started to use inbreeding. I think most of you know what it means, but just for the sake of it, it's the practice of making closely related animals copulate with each other to produce offspring. Yeah, people did not learn anything from Habsburgs. You guessed right that this could be the cause of unusual body structure of some dog breeds. Breeders were attaching great importance to the specific features of the breed and were trying to highlight them as much as possible because people associated those features with certain dogs and were simply looking for them. Those features were creating the standard of what a particular breed should look like, and people continued to breed for them so that dogs fitted in this generally accepted norm. Unfortunately, some of the features were taken to the extreme. Pugs in the past had less wrinkles, longer legs, longer muzzles. In general, the muzzles of brachycephalic breeds like Boston Terrier, English and French Bulldog seemed to flatten over the years. Such a strong emphasis on specific traits in dogs could also result from the initial roles of some breeds in the past. The origins of the pug date back to ancient China, where they were companions for wealthy, mostly members of the Chinese imperial family. Even when they were spread to other countries, there continued to be pets rather for royal families and nobility. My point is that pugs from the very beginning were bred to be good-looking dogs for rich people. And the situation was similar with French bulldogs. They were treated by Paris ladies as a kind of accessory. The features that give an idea of what an English bulldog looks like, such as a muscular body, a wide chest, were things that were needed for bull baiting. And bull baiting was a medieval sport where a bull would be tied or chained to a stake and would have to fight a dog, presumably a bulldog. The Middle Ages were pretty fucked up. American Bully, for a difference, is basically a combination of breeds that were used also in bull baiting and later for dog fighting. That's why this breed also has traits good for fighting, which makes it associated with being aggressive and advertised as a dog for real machos. However, breeders took it too seriously to obtain these desired traits, which resulted in
caricatures,
like this entire micro-bully thing. This is an example of quite extreme selective breeding. Someone thought that it is a good idea to minimize a dog that is supposed to be bigger in general and still keep all the features the same. Even though the micro-bully's legs are much shorter, it still has the same wide chest as a standard bully, which makes it harder for these dogs to move. Because not only do they have short legs, but they are also widely spaced. I really don't get why pseudo-breeders advertise their special bullies as gangsta dogs, because they are so deformed that I don't know how they would be capable of attacking anyone. Have you seen how awfully they run? Even I'm not that terrible at running. You will not convince me that you are a gangsta or any shit like that when you have a mutant frog on a leash. Oh, I forgot to mention that these dogs very often are being inbred. Sometimes twice. Which means that some dogs that have offspring together may have both the same parents and grandparents.
Damn!
What's most important is that their breeding is not entirely legal. Officially, there's no breed such as micro-bully or exotic bully. None of these breeds were recognized by the International Canine Federation or even Bully Kennel Club. The European Bully Kennel Club even published a statement on its website declaring that they do not support the breeding of exotic bully and that it's not a breed. I think I won't shock anyone when I will say that the main consequence of intensive selective breeding of dogs is nothing other than their increased morbidness. And as I said in the beginning, every breed has diseases they are more prone to, but there are breeds that literally get the worst package of genes. Take a pug, for example. First of all, their heads are literally too small to even accommodate their brains, so everything, including soft tissues, is squeezed into their small skull. That's because over the years their skulls have become smaller to meet the human's expectations, but, well, their organs have not. Another aspect is that their wrinkles and folds, which are simply excess skin which pugs are bred to have, increase the risk of skin infections. In such folds, bacteria and dirt gather very easily, and the dog won't clean them itself, what can cause infections in these areas. Therefore, in this case, the owner's care is important. Apart from that, this cute curved tail that they are also bred to have is often due to a hemivertebra, which is a congenitionally deformed vertebra. Hemivertebra are hemivertebrae only in the vertebrae of the tail itself will rather not affect the dog. But when you specifically breed dogs to have hemivertebrae, there is a risk that it will also appear in other parts of the spine. If it does, it can cause wobbliness on the back legs, incontinence, and abnormally shaped vertebrae that puts pressure on the spinal cord, which can provoke pain. Pugs between 6 and 12 months are also sometimes diagnosed with hip dysplasia, which is abnormal formation of the hip socket and is inherited. Additionally, pugs are much more prone to obesity than other dogs, maybe because many pugs have difficulty breathing or a tendency to overheat, and in such situation too intense exercise is rather not recommended. While we are on the subject of breathing, its pushed-in face snout is definitely not helping to breathe properly either. Maybe let's discuss the condition. I don't know if I should call it a condition because I don't know if it is categorized as such. More like a trait that affects most of the breeds I talked about in this video, which is brachycephaly. Brachycephaly is the type of a shorter skull that, in relation to dogs and cats, is showing in short muzzles and even flattened-like faces. The brachycephalic breeds include Pug, French and English Bulldog, Shih Tzu, Boston Terrier, Boxer, Pekingese, and some other. Brachycephaly in dogs can be considered to be more of a spectrum because there are breeds whose muzzles are almost entirely flat, like the Pug or French Bulldog, but also breeds with less brachycephaly, for example the Boxer. It is good to highlight that brachycephaly was the desired effect by breeders, not an accident, even though, as I have mentioned before, it squeezes brain and tissues in the skull and leads to brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome. The BOAS is an airway disease heavily associated with brachycephaly that induces respiratory issues. The condition is triggered by anatomical defects that occur usually in brachycephalic breeds, such as stenotic nares, an elongated soft palate, aberrant nasopharyngeal turbinates, hypoplastic trachea, and macroglossia. Oh my god, too much medical vocabulary for today. All these traits are responsible for the difficulties with breathing that brachycephalic dogs tend to have, which means that not every pug, not every bulldog will have such problems because even though they are frequent, they may simply not have such defects.
So this is Freddie. He is a male French bulldog. He's got a nice nose on him and he's got very little noise. He can exercise and he is good in heat. So this is a pretty good French bulldog.
The level of narrowing of their nares also plays a big role in the quality of breathing. The more severe the stenosis, the more blocked their airways will be. This is why some pugs open their mouths with their tongues hanging out much more often. They simply try to breathe through their mouths. The components I mentioned make it more difficult to breathe while exercising or when it's hot, because a dog with these may not be capable of taking deep or fast breaths. Brachycephaly is also the cause of bulging eyes and, for example, pugs that can pop out. Okay, new fear unlocked. I'm being serious. It's called proptosis. The reason for this, and in general other eye problems in pugs and brachycephalic breeds, is that their flatal skull causes them to have very shallow eye socket, which makes their eyes stick out more. This leads to eyes being more vulnerable to damage. It only takes the dog to lie its head down where it shouldn't. In relation to proptosis, I get that it's very traumatic to talk about, but I want to clarify how it can even happen. Where there's too much pressure put on the eyelid, then the eyelid will cause the eyeball to pop out of its socket. Just in case someone who owns a pug is watching, if this happens to you, immediately go to the vet. Like, run. Some of the health problems that pugs struggle with also occur in bulldogs. Both British and French bulldogs, and apparently Boston Terriers too, just like pugs, are at higher risk of skin infections, the brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome, obesity, overheat, and eye issues. Apart from that, it's common for bulldogs to have orthopedic problems like patellar luxation, elbow and hip dysplasia, or some spinal abnormalities. All of these might be the result of their massive body and short legs that can place a lot of strain on the joints. French Bulldogs are more prone to ear infections because their ear canals have a shape which makes it harder for debris and moisturize to escape the ear canal in case they get inside. What's horrific, French Bulldogs even face difficulties with giving birth, and usually a C-section needs to be done. Thing is that they were bred to have large heads that during birth cannot pass through the narrow hips of the mom, because otherwise the puppies would get stuck in the birth canal. We literally created a dog that is almost impossible for it to give birth naturally because of its anatomy. Another breed that is in danger of health problems due to its body structure it was bred to have is Basset Hound. Its short legs and long back make it have a natural tendency to suffer from orthopedic conditions. Since the Basset Hound's paws are turned outward so that the dogs can keep their balance, there is a possibility for their legs to become deformed or twisted and cause issues with the hind legs. That's why it's common for them to have arthritis, which manifests itself in their hind legs becoming weaker and as a result falling down. Just like bulldogs, they are at higher risk of having hip and elbow dysplasia, lateral luxation, or spinal conditions such as very frequent intervertebral disc disease, which in general is the case for short-legged dogs. The mentioned IVDD, of course I have to explain it, is a disease that occurs when the jelly-like cushion located between vertebra, called intervertebral disc by the way, slips out of its place or bursts, causing the pressure on the spinal cord. Shar-Peis are also poor in terms of how they were bred because their characteristic scale folds, which they have a lot, are difficult to clean, causing Shar-Peis to easily get skin infections, as I said it with pugs. But that's not all, because their coat is pretty prickly and, skin folds constantly rub against each other, so they may irritate the skin. Even though Shar-Pei is not considered a brachycephalic breed, I think so. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit psychotic from all these health-related words. It still tends to have difficulties with breathing due to the white soft palates that are also the effect of breeding. What's absolutely crazy to me is that Shar-Peis are likely to experience regular fevers, just like casually. And there's a name for it, Shar-Pei fever. Okay, that wasn't groundbreaking. Or Shar-Pei fever syndrome, or familial Shar-Pei fever, whatever, there are different names for that actually. Shar-Pei fever is caused by the same genetic mutation that gives the Shar-Peis more folds and wrinkles on their skin, and this is rather a desirable trait in them. It is estimated that in the US, around 23% of Shar-Peis have a mutation of the HAS2 gene that causes the overproduction of hyaluronic acid, which is a factor responsible for giving their skin extra folds and wrinkles. Excess hyaluronic acid activates the immune system, which treats it like a danger and triggers a fever as a response. Fevers can last from 12 to 36 hours and be as high as 41 degrees Celsius. For comparison, the normal body temperature of a dog is between 37.5 and 39 degrees Celsius. A common symptom of Shar-Pei fever, apart from the fever itself, are also swollen hocks. Imagine regularly suffer from fevers because someone thought the folds on your skin were nice. For pseudo-breeders, because I'm so sorry, if you breed dogs like crazy and don't give the tiniest shit about their well-being, you should not be a breeder. So, as I said, for pseudo-breeders, nothing is more important than their vision regarding the dog's appearance, and the fact that they can cause genetic defects is irrelevant. The living proof of that is the microbully. The fact it even exists. It is the final boss of selective breeding. I don't know if anything can top that. Because of breeders insisting on them being so micro, their limbs are deformed and barely able to support their heavy body, so their weight puts pressure on the joints. This results in joint disorders such as hip and elbow dysplasia. If not being able to move properly isn't enough, they also can't breathe normally because they are bred to have brachycephaly, and we have already talked what it leads to. That combination of having to carry the heavy body on short legs and not being able to catch a proper breath is literally torture. It makes microbullies have difficulty to regulate their body temperature and causes them to overheat. In addition, there are such disgusting practices being done to them, like ear cropping. No surprise that these dogs live a very short life, only a few years, 7 at most. And all this just so people can feel happy for a while because they have a cool dog. I have heard many opinions that it would be the best for pugs, for example, to go extinct. And, well, this is definitely a very extreme solution, and I am a fan of a more peaceful one, although I'm not saying that I completely disagree with this statement. I think the most fairy tale ending would be if we adjusted the most affected breeds to have healthier traits through outcrossing. And here comes the problem with every solution for this issue. For breeders to start taking any steps, they have to see a profit and sense in it. For me, this long-term process is worth it if this means more newborn dogs will live with less suffering. However, until people stop buying pugs, etc., because they are cute or no legal changes will be introduced, breeders will not stop breeding them. We should breed dogs that have the best chance of a healthy life and stop putting aesthetic values first. Of course, there's always a risk of genetic defects, diseases, no matter what breed it is. There are things that are unpredictable and over which we have no control. But we should take care of what we have control over. As I said, there are dog breeds which suffering could be avoided if their bodies were not designed this way by humans. The breeding industry should have more regulations. Why is it even legal to breed brachycephalic dogs when in humans brachycephaly is considered a deformity? Even inbreeding is not necessarily illegal in most countries. Well, to me, inbreeding counts as animal abuse because it is forcing something that is absolutely against nature and has serious consequences. I only know that just recently something happened that the European Union banned inbreeding of dogs and cats. In big 2026, we ban forcing incest on animals. Ojai, California, for a difference, in 2024 was the first US city to ban the breeding of dogs and cats with features associated with health issues such as short muzzles, corkscrew tails, and excessive skin folds. What's promising is that despite everything, there are already attempts to bring healthier appearance of the pug, what's being called a retro pug. Retro pugs have less wrinkles, longer snouts, and ears. They were developed by mixing a traditional pug with a Jack Russell or a Person Russell Terrier. The retro comes from the fact that they are supposed to resemble the appearance of pugs in the past. The message I really want to deliver through this video is that if you are considering getting a dog, please think before you buy. Think whether you are supporting a business that aligns with what you believe is right. Take into account that brachycephalic and wrinkled breeds may need extra healthcare and more precision when it comes to washing their skin folds. Also, I will always encourage you, if you want to have a dog, to adopt a rescued one. At the end, I want to say, if anyone cares, I don't mean to judge owners of the mentioned breeds, maybe except for the microbully one. I also have people around me who have pugs or bulldogs, and no, surprisingly, I don't lecture them every time about how bad people they are. Sometimes it happens that we don't know something, we are just humans. I don't want these dogs to be thrown out either. No, they deserve love too, like any other dog. And with this message, I leave you. Thanks for watching this video. As always, stay hydrated, drink water, and love your dogs. Bye!